Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Whatever time it is for you as you tune in, Wominja Car, welcome. It's a Solo Pro webcast, and I'm Cole Fink, and it is a beautiful Melbourne day, so I'm feeling very chipper this morning. Is anyone else feeling chipper? If you're feeling chipper today, give us a little yep in the chat box. Feeling quite chipper. I hope so. Always. Good, Josh. Glad to hear it. A man with a hat like that usually is chipper. Are you wearing the hat right now, Josh, or is that just for your profile pic? Rob Pine, I see that your bookcase is arranged in a very similar manner to mine. Gone with the color rather than the title. Good. Do you find that's actually practical, or is that purely for our benefit, looking at your background, mate?
I would like to say it was beneficial, but I don't use the books as much as I perhaps should. Anyway,
So, like, I honestly, when I first did it, I did it because I thought it looked cool, right? I'd seen Lisa O'Neill or someone like that do it. I was like, oh, cool, look at that. You can arrange your books by color. And then I did it, and it was really primarily because it looked cool like this. But then I discovered I'm actually a lot better at remembering what color a book
yeah,
is than what
yeah,
it's called.
yeah.
And so I actually find it quite practical. If I know it's a small book, then I look for the right color book up here. If I know it's a medium book, I look for it here. And if I know if I never read it, then it's down there.
Yeah.
Excellent. Nice to see you, Rob. Thanks for coming along.
And you?
Uh, so, everyone here presumably runs something resembling a solo business. And I just want to express the fact that whilst I talk about being a solo pro and the fact that everything that I do is geared towards people running a solo business, I just want to quickly acknowledge that there is like a degree of, what should we say, nuance around the sides of what a solo business actually is. Because you see, I have a full-time employee. And so, by any sort of strict definition, obviously, I don't actually run the solo business. And Sharon and Linda, they run the same business together. And unless I'm mistaken, there's pretty much definitely two of them. So they're not strictly a solo business. And I don't care. I don't care that I have a full-time employee. I don't care that there's two of them running that business. The key to a solo business, and I think the kind of essence of it is, if you run a business where the primary source of value is you, then you're running a solo business, right? So Gino is a full-time employee of mine, but the fact is that if I was sick for 6 months, there's not a lot that Gino could do to keep the money coming in. I am the source of value in this business, and therefore I think of it as a solo business. And similarly, whilst Linda and Sharon are obviously not a single person, right? They may be two parts of a hive mind. Is that a fair description, Linda May? I don't know. Yep. I do think you complement each other very well. But the point is that they are the source of value in the business. There's obviously we can all have little systems, and maybe plenty of us have a few products that we might be able to sell, whether it be books or online courses or whatever, where there is some value stored outside of you and there's a little bit of leverage at play. But in general, we're talking about people who run a business where we are the business. So does that make sense? And am I describing you? Are you your business? Yes? Okay, cool. So today's webcast is called Be Easy to Buy, because one of the great tragedies of solo business is that you can be incredibly good at what you do and never sell anything. And I don't want that for you. Can I just get a show of hands or a little like yep in the chat box if you feel like the biggest issue in your business might not be your ability to deliver value, but instead your ability to get people to buy that value? Could that be you? Could that be okay? Excellent. So today's webcast is all about that. There are hours and hours of conversations and ideas we could kick around in terms of improving the amount of value that you actually deliver when you work, but today's not about that. There's oodles of way that we could talk about structuring your offerings and all that stuff, but we're not going to talk about that. What we are going to talk about is simply, are we making any kind of dumb mistakes that make us difficult to buy? And what I want to do, what I'm hopeful of, what I'm optimistic about, is that we will be able to surface 3 things today for each of you that you can change pretty much immediately that will make you easier to buy. So the first thing I want you to do, if you don't mind, is to take your notebook, scrap of paper, whatever you've got in front of you, and I just want you to write 1, 2, 3 right at the top, and maybe put a heading, changes that I commit to implementing above that. Changes that I commit to implementing, 1, 2, 3. And sure, you can type that into a computer if you like, but that would be distracting you from the Zoom, which is why I like to have a piece of paper instead. I'm also strongly of the opinion that you use a different piece of your brain when you're holding one of these than when you're doing some of these. So I very much appreciate I think there's a broader variety of ideas and thoughts that can be captured with a pen than can be captured with a keyboard, unless you are an extremely proficient computer user. So in general, if we're ideating, I like it if you're holding a pen. It's my personal preference. You don't have to, just saying. So give me a thumbs up if you've got things I commit to changing 1, 2, and 3 on your piece of paper in front of you. Is that what you got? Excellent. And hopefully now, not only do we have these 3 spaces on a piece of paper, but we've got like an open loop in your mind now where because if we get to the end of webcast and you haven't written 3 things, then like that. So hopefully now, over the course of the next 52 minutes, your brain is going to be seeking like, what are the 3 things that I'm going to do? And tell me, why isn't it 27? Why shouldn't we look for 27 things to do? Like if there are 27 ways you could improve how to be easier to buy, why shouldn't we do all 27? Is there a good reason for that?
It'd just be way too much. It'd be overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. It's an overwhelmed thing. I reckon like there's probably a million things that all of us could do to improve our businesses in some way or whatever. And if we wrote down all a million, the likelihood that we'd do any of them drops precipitously. If you just got 3 things, I think you'll actually do them. So yes, that's it, Emma. I reckon 3 is a number that we can do. I also think that 3 is probably enough. Do you know what I mean? Like we don't have to change everything that you do here. And given that we've said 3, there's a bit, if you notice that there's actually 6 you could do, then there's going to be some kind of assessment, prioritization, benefit analysis that you might run to decide which of the 3 that I'm going to do. And I reckon that's really helpful too. So in total, I have 10 possible things, and those 10 might spit out a bunch underneath that. But we're just going to go through 10 and you try and pick 3. Is that cool? Excellent. I'm going to divide the 10 into 3 kind of groups. They are pre-sale, during provision, so like when you're providing the value, during the sale, and then post-sale, so when you're actually providing the value. But the first one is actually more overarching, and it's this. So, whoa, that pen is significantly too large. Let's go with that side. So, number 1, he said, turning this on, there we go. Number 1, I reckon one of the reasons we are hard to buy because we are too close to our own stuff. So do you get the idea that we have like less, we don't have an objective view of what we offer to the world because we're so close to it? And so would you agree that like your perspective on your prices is a bit weird? We talked about pricing in a recent previous webcast. Your objective of your pricing is a bit weird because you're a bit close to your own stuff. Similarly, I think that your perspective on your the experience of buying your stuff is heavily skewed because you're way too close to it. When I've worked in organizations before and we have hired in a new person, one of the first things that I would do in that case is get that new person to experiment with being a customer and to test out what it's like to interact with the website or to, follow this link or whatever, because they don't know what to expect. They don't know what we do. They don't know how much it's likely to cost. They have a completely fresh set of eyes. And you only get to have that fresh set of eyes once. And so when you bring a new person in, you have this magical but only very short opportunity to get their perspective as someone who's not a part of your thing. And so I think in general, we have a problem being in solo business that we're too close to our own stuff and that we find it difficult to get other perspectives. And so I've got two little tricks that you can implement to try and improve that. So the first thing you can do is storyboard. And this might sound kind of naff, to be honest. You might be like, oh, really, Cole? I have to draw little pictures. But it's remarkable how effective it really is, I promise. When you storyboard, and I really do mean storyboard, so you're not allowed to just do dot points because dot points don't capture the experience of what it's like to interact with your stuff, right? I actually want you to draw pictures. It doesn't matter if you're shit at drawing pictures. That's okay. You can draw tiny, so like for example, if step one was there's a person sitting at their computer screen, right? That's fine. You can just draw that. There's a person at the computer screen and then they click and then they whatever, right? And so what I want you to do is a little cartoon of the experience of working with you. So for example, if you send out a regular newsletter and there's a call to action in that newsletter, then I want you to storyboard it, what the experience is like of following that call to action and doing whatever it is you want them to do. Because when you storyboard it, it's an extremely rudimentary but surprisingly effective method of making sure that you put yourself in the other person's shoes to experience it. And so you go, okay, we're going to go from this email. We're going to land on this landing page. We're going to see this video and these 3 dot points. And then we're going to do this and then we're going to do that. And that might seem completely rudimentary, but I have, number one, corrected a number of glaring errors of my own by storyboarding it and going, oh my goodness, they're sitting there, they don't have this piece of information, or they don't know what the right option would be, or they're not sure how they would do whatever. Like, I have a sudden realization that there was an assumed piece of knowledge that I have and that I just know because I'm me and I'm used to all this stuff. And I realize in drawing a storyboard that they're sitting there without that piece of knowledge. And so suddenly that disentangles a massive barrier to being easy to buy. Right? So draw little storyboards no matter how crap your artistic skills are. Has anyone ever done that before? Yeah, Rob, that looks like a question.
Well, yeah, I just thought I'd add that in my newsletter last week, I put a button saying, contact me for a clarity call. And my business manager tells me that 59 people clicked on that link, but no one has actually booked a clarity call. So I'm just trying to, either the stats are wrong or there's some problem here.
Yeah.
Storyboard to go like, why did 59 people click on it and no one actually make a
book? What are they doing when they get to the actual page?
I think the data's probably wrong, right? But anyway.
Well,
might talk to there might be some kind of fundamental error.
How did an email thing miss? I don't know. That I get it. Like 59 to 0 seems too horrendous to be true. But imagine if it is, Rob, the potential that's sitting right there and correcting whatever that error is. Yeah. Holy shit.
Anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. Could it be wrong? If it wasn't, that is a massive opportunity.
Probably a bit of both, but that doesn't sound right. No, I normally don't get 59 people clicking on the link. So
that does sound like a lot. Maybe a robot went haywire. Still, I mean, I guess the thing to do would be if you've had a book a clarity call link in an email before, if you did it 3 weeks ago or a month ago, go back and check that one and see what the stats were at that time. Or if not, put it in again this week and watch it like a hawk. So Rob just gave a tip that you could put in one of your 3. Have you made it really easy for someone to book in a call with you? So I know that I dabble in doing that. I don't make it a full-time permanent thing because I like my free time. But 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did exactly what Rob just said. I said, book a clarity call. Rob, I don't know how many people clicked the link, but I know 27 people booked a call. And I think I made like $18,000 out of those 27 calls, and a bunch of people are now coming to my event on December the 8th. You should come too if you're not already booked in, everyone. And so, like, if you want to be easy to buy, make it absolutely clear that they should call you. That would be one option, right? So, yeah, I would follow that up, Rob, because if there are 59 people who actually want to talk to you but they haven't yet, let's sort that for sure. So cool. We're all a bit too close to our stuff. One way you can resolve that is storyboard. The other way you can resolve that is ask. I think there are two groups of people that you can ask. The first are your existing clients. So if you have a person who goes through and makes a sale, all right, and you're serving them, you can say, hey, can I just ask? Can you just tell me what it was like, the experience of finding me? Where did you find me? How long did you follow my stuff? What parts did you follow? What bits were compelling? What bits turned you off? When someone has invested in your service, I reckon it's also true that they've invested in you a little bit. When you're a solo business and you are your business, nobody buys just the outcome that you're producing. They also buy the experience of being with you, right? In a sense, they're buying a little bit of friendship. The people who come to me to help grow their solo business are different to the people that go to Taki Moore or whoever else, right? He's a charismatic, interesting guy. Some people prefer him. I like to think that I'm vaguely charismatic and interesting and practical, right? And if that's what you like, then you come to me. But there's a little bit, at least a little bit, no matter what your service is, that they're actually also buying you. They're investing in you. And what that means is they like you. And what that means is they care about your success. And so if you ask them for a perspective on what it was like to go through your stuff, in my experience, most people will be incredibly generous and incredibly sensitive whilst being honest. Does that make sense? So they will tell you the truth because they want you to improve. So actually ask the people who buy your stuff what the experience was like. And the other person you can ask, of course, is a mentor of some kind. And so I am meeting up with a client in a couple of weeks, and he said to me, look, I want to improve my ability to attract people and convert them. Can you go through my whole process? And then we have a half day together where we work through it, right? And so I've gone onto his website and I've filled in the diagnostic tool and I've applied and I've asked for the book and all that. I'm going through the whole process as though I'm a client, and then we're going to workshop it because obviously he trusts my perspective. So you can ask a mentor or a colleague or whatever to go through your stuff, and you'll get different feedback from them than you would from a client. And I think both are really useful and valuable perspectives to collect. All right. So you're a bit too close to your own stuff. So can we storyboard it to make sure that you're not doing anything obviously wrong? And then can you ask people about their experience and learn and tweak from there? Cool. Any other thoughts on the fact that we're all a bit close to our own stuff? Anything else that comes up for you when we think about being easy to buy on that topic? Yeah, cool. Awesome. So let's go from there to pre-sale. Right, so I want to give you a few things that we can work on pre-sale, which should make us easier to buy. But firstly, a quick poll. In general, do you aspire to doing meaningful, significant work? Is that something that you want to do? Do you want to do meaningful and significant work? Yeah, me too. That's excellent. And in the long term, that's what we want to do. And meaningful and significant work requires a lot of trust, a huge amount of trust and investment. Because meaningful and significant work typically is bigger engagements that require more commitment, etc. Okay? And so there's this tension that we have here where if you were doing, because one definition of the opposite of meaningful and significant work would be meaningless and insignificant work. And I doubt that any of us aspire to doing meaningless and insignificant work. But do you see that there's this tension here where if we're doing meaningful and significant work, it requires, large amounts of time and large amounts of commitment and large amounts of trust and large amounts of resources potentially. And all of those things make it slightly harder to buy our stuff, right? And so I think what we want to do is think about, so if this is going to be meaningful, not fitting it in here, and this is significant, I think we can also think about what are practical, so not meaningless, but practical, and not insignificant, but modest. Okay? And so you see, if we set it up this way, we kind of end up with a bit of a quadrant, and it's all a bit a spectrum, right? But if I look at meaningful and significant work, I think it requires a lot of, and yeah, it's like trust, commitment, resources, etc. Which means that there are some barriers to purchase. If you look at meaningful and modest work, so this is smaller little chunks of something really meaningful, I often find that, not to say that this has to be true, but I often find that difficult to sustain. And one of the places where I have had this realization was a friend of mine was asking me how he should structure his work as a therapist. And you get that if a therapist sells their sessions by the session, as soon as they put anything hard in front of their client, the client can just go, oh, this is too much, I can't be bothered, and they don't come to the next session. So it's this really meaningful work, but because it's only sold in modest chunks, it's actually really difficult to sustain. So there can be challenges down in that corner. If you do really significant and practical work, it can actually become kind of overwhelming and boring. Because whilst it is practical and we're getting value out of it, if there's no meaning attached to it, it just, this to me is the things like working through huge spreadsheets to find value or whatever might be really like a significant piece of work that creates lots and lots of practical value, but it's soul destroying because you're not growing at the same time. So there's challenges in that square too. And finally, if you do modest and practical work, I think that this is what is easiest to buy. Because it doesn't take huge amounts of commitment, and it doesn't take huge amounts of resources, and it doesn't take huge amounts of trust, but there's a quick exchange, we get value out of it, and we now have generated a bit more trust, and we've generated a bit more commitment. And so what I'm thinking we might want to do with your offerings is start in the modest and practical square with a view to growing up into the meaningful and significant square as the level of trust and commitment and resources that your client has with you and for you grows. So if we aspire to doing meaningful and significant work, I want to start by offering them options which are practical and modest that allow us to engender the trust that's going to be required, the commitment that's going to be required, and make it possible to commit the resources that are going to be required to do the thing you really want to do, which might be meaningful and significant. That makes sense? It's not that we don't ever want to do meaningful work. It's not that we don't ever want to do significant work. Quite the contrary. Like next year, I want you to commit to a program with me where we go to work for 12 months together to build your business, right? That's what I'm bringing you towards. But do you get right now we're sitting on a webinar that cost you nothing? It's super practical. You're going to come away with 3 things to do. And at the end of it, I'm hoping that you're going to like me a little bit more, that you're going to trust me a little bit more, and that when I say, hey, I want you to do this, you're going to have the trust ready to make the commitment and commit the resources, right? The money and the time and the energy to going on this journey together next year, which is what I actually want to do. And so it's not that this webinar is meaningless or insignificant, but it kind of is in the scheme of things. It's a piece of a puzzle of a bigger thing. That makes sense? And I want you to do the same. So, what I want you to do, this is an idea I'm stealing from Lisa O'Neill. super clever chick from New Zealand. And, whoops, that's the wrong button. She likens what you offer as like a menu at a restaurant. She wants you to have a menu. And do you get that if we went into a restaurant and they didn't have a menu, it'd be really hard to buy anything? So if we're going to be easy to buy, then it makes sense we would have a menu. And there are a couple of elements of menus that I think are useful to learn from as a metaphor. And the first is that they start with sometimes even a freebie, but certainly low-cost stuff. Entrees, appetizers, right? And they go right up to the full degustation, which is a bit more meaningful and significant, yeah? And you get that the first time I go to the restaurant, if the full degustation is $250, I may not commit to that. The first time I go to the restaurant, I might just try out the, what's the one I always use when I want to test if a restaurant's any good? What's that pasta? It's creamy sauce with bacon in it. I've just blanked on the name.
Carbonara.
Carbonara, exactly. So carbonara is the perfect meal to test a restaurant with, because good carbonara is to die for and bad carbonara makes you die. And so if ever you're not sure, you just order the carbonara and then you'll know. But then you'll come back and do the degustation. So on your menu, can you go from free to expensive? Oh, Chris, I've just seen your comment in the chat box. That's lovely. Thank you, sir. I trust you and like you as well, mate. Yeah, I don't think I would have needed this webinar to convince you to do the next thing with me, Chris, but I'm glad that you're here anyway. Just quickly, do you already have a suite of offerings starting at free and moving right their way up to expensive? Give me a yes or no. Okay, so some of you will know. Awesome. So I reckon this should be one of your three. I reckon you want to have something where when a person finds you and think, wow, this person's pretty good, I reckon you want something that's free that they can interact with you, which gives them lots of value and which alerts you to their presence and existence and makes sure that you know that they're there and that they might need your help. Unless you've got a better idea, it's some kind of download on your website that they have to trade their email address for. So there's a diagnostic tool and they put in their email address and then they get to do the tool. Or there is some kind of worksheet and they give you their email address and they get to download the worksheet. There's something that says, oh, I'm interested in this, and they trade you their email address. I've said it before, I'll say it again. A person's email address at this moment in history is the most valuable thing you can know about them. I mean, unless you're a scammer and you knew their like their social security number in the US or their license number in Australia or something like that. Maybe that would be more valuable if you lacked scruples. But for those of us who carry scruples around, I reckon an email address is the most valuable thing you can know about a person, even more valuable than their name. So trade them. Trade them something super valuable for their email address. And then offer them something, and this is where you might want to storyboard it, but offer them something that seems like the right amount of commitment, whether in time, money, or resources, or energy, right? To test you out. And so Rob's saying, hey, just book in for a discovery call with me. There's an investment of time, right? And for a lot of introverts, do you get that there's an investment of energy? Like offering someone a free call is not a free thing for a lot of people. If my wife was to ring you based on an offer on your website, she's made a massive investment in you because she's introverted as shit. She has never answered an unknown number in her life, never. Right, if her phone rings and it's not one of her friends, I'm answering it because that's how introverted she is. So if she was to find Rob and be like, wow, this seems really interesting, do you get that even though his phone call is free in terms of money, that's a huge investment in Misha's perspective because she's so introverted. So give people a set of staged possibilities, starting with a free download where they don't have to interact with you personally. I reckon the next one is some kind of interaction with you. Now, if you're really well positioned and you're like $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year in either revenue or profit, you may not have the time to do that, right? And I offer it sometimes, but not all the times. And then what we might want to think about is there something that they can buy first, which is practical and modest and leads into something meaningful and significant? And let's put that on the menu. So have a menu and be inspired by a menu. Have dessert. You know, if someone's done your big thing, what do they want to do right after that? The sweetness that tops it off. Right? Be inspired by a menu. There's a lot of genius in menus. Now, the other thing about menus that I think we should do is we should put it on the table. Now, everything that someone teaches is hypocritical in some way. And this is the one for me. In preparing this webinar, I was like, oh, Cole, you do not have your menu on the table. There is nowhere in the universe other than my brain where you can find out what I've got for sale, and that is so dumb. There are a lot of people, more than you would think, who want to just look at the menu and then make a commitment and buy something. And if you don't show them the menu, they can't. And I'm honestly thinking about the last 12 months of my life, and I have probably missed out on $50,000 or more because I don't have my menu on the table. And the number one thing that I'm taking away from this webinar, and position number 1 on my 3, is put the menu on the table. So what I mean by that is stick it on your website. What can people buy? And I'm not suggesting that there isn't an argument to being selective about what you display, right? But in general, if people can't see what you have for sale, they are not going to buy it. You're putting up barriers. You're forcing them to talk to you. Some introverts don't want to do that. They want to make a decision. Never stop someone from making a decision. Even if that decision's not to go with you, it's still good. Decisions make the future. It's the friendliest, kindest thing you can do is empower people to make decisions. Cool. So have a menu. Number 3. Can we always have something for sale? So a good example of this would be a regular training day that you run, for example. Maybe it's once every 4 months or once every 6 months you run some training day. I'm imagining that you sell things to organizations here, right? So tweak this if you need to suit it. But even if you generally do in-person, in-house training for organizations, it's really helpful to have kind of trainings that you host that an organization could send just a couple of people to, but to always have that for sale. So if there's a person who, appears out of the woodwork, discovers you and thinks this is the person I want to work with, can we make sure that they can commit to something right now while they're in the mood to commit is the key. Do you get that the mood to commit is like seasonal? So it's a bit cyclical. Have you noticed that in yourself? Do you find that? Where you're like, sometimes you're like super decisive and you just want to do stuff. And other times you're like, oh, nah, I'll stew on this for a while. I don't think it's related to actual seasons, but I do genuinely think people go through cycles of being decisive and indecisive. We want to make sure all the decisive people can make decisions about working with us. So always have something for sale. It can be, you've always got one-on-one coaching available for $5,000 or $10,000 or something, right? That's always an option. That's my one. If I don't have something specific to sell you right now, I can definitely work with you one-on-one. Okay, quick pause. I've been talking too much and I want to hear some other voices. I'm just wondering, what has been the most useful one for you so far? I'd just love to hear from a couple of people. What's already made it onto one of your 3, if there is one? Chris.
Yeah,
there you go.
Mouse isn't working very well today. Anyway, I have actually been thinking just recently talking to my daughter, who's a teacher at a high school, that I
Right.
would like to do some visiting teaching. So it's free. I come in and take a class in physics with the physics teacher there, for instance.
Perfect. So it's like the appetizer on the menu. Get a
Yeah.
taste of what it's like to work with Chris in your school. Wonderful. I love it. Anyone else? What have you got so far?
I've got a question, Cole.
Yeah. I'll
Because
take questions.
we put a nice big tab on our website which is just simply entitled Free Stuff, which has been
Yes.
incredibly popular, and there's been
Yeah.
tons of downloads. And Sharon is now getting very resentful because some of the people that we are now spamming on that one, because we've got their email, just
Yeah.
won't play ball, just won't respond, or and she's getting very resentful that they're just a bunch of freeloaders. So how do we reframe that and go, maybe they're just not ready to buy yet, or maybe they just don't like what we've got to offer?
Totally. Sharon, how often do you buy a car?
Once every, I don't know, 10 years.
Right, once every 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, I chose a car because I knew that your answer would be about that, right? And you may not be the kind of person who follows Mercedes on Facebook or whatever, right? I don't know. You look like a Mazda 3 driver to me, but I could be wrong. Is that
No,
what you drive, Linda?
That's Linda.
Perfect. All right. I think I should get some credit for that, even if it was the wrong half of the partnership. Anyway, do you get that if Mercedes or Mazda or any other car company thought about their clients that way, it would be self-defeating? So I think about clients, in fact, I've got a little Venn diagram here. So this is all the people who could at some day, some point, never get this in the right spot, engage you and your services, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, as a portion of the world's population, it's minuscule, right? But these are the people that we're interested in. They're all the people who could someday use all your stuff. And some percentage of them have traded you their email address. So they've found you somewhere, right? Your profile building has worked, and they've discovered you, and they've been like, oh wow, look at this free stuff tab. Let's download that. Oh, this is super useful. That's super useful. And within that group, there's some percentage of them who might buy your stuff ever, right? Not everyone who downloads your stuff is going to become a client ever, right? Some of them just aren't going to. There are lots of people who are just tire kickers, or maybe they, maybe they found you by accident and you're the wrong people or whatever. But some percentage of all the people who have ever exchanged value for an email address with you will actually ever buy your stuff. And within that group, some percentage want to do it right now. And the thing to be mindful of is that as time carries on, oh, that's not going to work. Maybe it will. That percentage is going to move around, as in like the group of people who are ready to buy it right now changes. Does that make sense? Our job is to make sure we are there and present, ready for the moment someone moves into that little circle. That's our job. Our job is not to worry about the people who are between the yellow and the aqua lines who are never going to buy our stuff, because they're never going to buy our stuff, so don't worry about it. Having them on your email list doesn't really cost you much. I mean, if they're there for too long, it makes your deliverability not as good, and the nerds would tell you should delete them eventually. Like, so if someone doesn't open any of your emails for a year, just delete them from your list, right? But those people aren't really that important to you. The people that are important to you are the ones who are either in that little green circle or they're just about to be. And the way we want to think about our emailing is to make sure that we are there and present and ready and front of mind for those people who are about to end up in the circle. Mercedes knows that you're not going to buy a car every year. But the year you are going to buy a car, they want to make sure that theirs is the email you open most frequently, not BMWs, not Audis, right? That's all we're trying to do with the people on that list, is be there and present and front of mind when they get to the point where they are ready to start engaging in a purchasing decision. Don't worry about the other ones, they don't matter. There's 8 billion people in the world. We don't have to be concerned with what they're all doing.
Hey, can I tell you a little story there?
Of course.
I grew up in a household where there were always cars in the backyard, and my dad would get 2 cars and build 1 car out of them. And so I grew up with that mentality that, you know, you never buy a new car, you just get a car and you get an engine from somewhere and you plonk it in. And when I got to 50, I thought, I'm sick of doing this. I'm sick of getting underneath cars, getting my head dirty, and you know it doesn't work, and you got to. And so I decided I was going to buy a new car, but I wasn't really ready to at that point of time. I needed some finance and other things to afford, but I decided which type of car I wanted to buy. So I went into the dealer and I said, "This is the car I'm going to buy when I buy a car." And every 2 or 3 months, I'd go in and look at that car again, and the salesperson, I talked to the same guy every time, he would spend as much time as I needed.
Yeah.
Go take a test drive, you know, take this one. Oh, there's a new model. Take the new model for test drive. And after 2 years, everything had fallen into place. It's like, I'm going to buy it today. And he says, okay, here's the price. He'd already worked it out, the best price I'd ever seen anyone give me.
Yeah.
But he spent as much time as I needed, and he just kept, and he emailed me, you know, with offers and events that were happening at the dealer, all that sort of stuff. So that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, treat the person like you know when the time is right, they're gonna do it, and you're gonna be there to make it happen. Treat them like they're just on the way to being ready to make a decision. I love that. That's awesome. Thanks, Chris. All right, next one. Be relevant. I reckon this is key. Key. The easiest way to be relevant is to serve only one market, to serve just one group of people. That's the easiest way to be relevant. If you're like me, you can have the annoying situation where you do serve a couple of different markets. And what you want to do is make sure that everything you do makes it really clear what is relevant to them. So my website says Cole Fink, picture of my face, and then there's literally just 2 big buttons. One says for solopreneurs and one says for organizations. The goal is just to make sure that I'm not subjecting people to stuff that isn't relevant to them. If you only serve one audience, then happy days, this is going to be a lot easier for you, but the lesson remains incredibly critical. Make sure that everything you're serving them is specifically and directly relevant to who they are. I've got a pithy statement written somewhere, which will end up on LinkedIn sometime soon, which says something to the effect of, marketing is psychology. And if you want to grow your business, you want to be deeply interested in how people think, right? Getting better and better at creating products that people want to buy, at communicating to them in ways that make them want to buy it, that communicate the value to them and the relevance to them and everything else, is an exercise in building a better and better and better mental model of how those other people think in your mind. And all of us have the problem that essentially we think of the way other people think as just how I would have reacted in that situation. But the more sophisticated we can get in terms of understanding how other people think, then the better at this we're going to be. Cool. So that was all pre-sale. We are now at the during the sale part. Step number 1 to being easy to buy during the sale, I think, is to make sure that what you're selling, and this kind of ties back to the idea of the menu. Oops, as always, drew it slightly too big. I really have to change the way I set this iPad up. Anyway, make sure that what you're selling comes in manageable chunks. If you're building someone up towards something that is meaningful and significant, can we break that down so that the very first step is modest and practical? And so if you were to look at that visually, it's like if they are on some kind of journey, all right, from here to there, and that getting to this magic spot up here would be meaningful and significant, let's offer them something practical and modest that cost 10K. And whilst it might be standalone, it's part of this greater journey heading up this way. So can we buy what you're offering in manageable chunks? Now, if you're selling to organizations in particular, think about how a person has access to funds. So in law firms, lots of the people that I'm dealing with can spend a number between $5,000 and $15,000 without anybody else's say so. But as soon as it's $16,000 or whatever the number is for them, suddenly there's more people that need to get involved. And if the number is north of somewhere between 30 and 50, depending on the organization, well, then now the managing partner looks at it and is the one that makes the decision, really. So if I want to sell someone $45,000 worth of stuff, yeah, I want to get to the point where there's enough trust that they are willing to make the commitment of time and energy and resources to make a $45,000 commitment. And I have a bunch of firms where I'm at that level, and each year we come around and go, right, do we want to do this? Yep, cool. And it's definitely easier then to just have one sale to negotiate. But that's an example of being with a group of people for whom, yeah, we have developed this level of trust. Without exception, every single one of those organizations, I started selling them something. In most cases, it was $4,500 was my very first small and manageable chunk. And it was literally, I'll do a keynote for your peeps. It'll be really funny and engaging, and it'll change how they think about sales in your law firm. So can you break it into manageable chunks? Now, if I sell them the $45,000 thing, it still has the keynote at the start of it. It's the first step. But by breaking it into manageable chunks, you can get it into a budget where they might just be able to whip out a credit card. And that's generally my goal if I'm selling to an organization, is to sell them a credit card sized thing. That's our first engagement. So if you've got something big and meaningful and significant, can you just break it into manageable chunks? Don't make it meaningless. Don't make it insignificant. Just make it manageable and buyable. This one might take a little bit of practice on your part, but it might also make the biggest difference. Make the offer at the meeting. I would like to hypothesize that for at least a third of the people here on this call, the biggest barrier to someone buying your stuff is the administrative and boring back and forth that has to occur in order for it to happen. Yeah, okay, that's great. I'll go away and I'll put together a proposal and I'll blah, blah, and blah. No, don't do any of that. When you're in the meeting, just tell them what's on offer and ask them if they want to buy it. I have a belief, it's not necessarily true, but I think it's a useful one, that nobody decides to buy my stuff if I'm not in their presence. As in, like, if they're going to buy one of the bigger, more meaningful, significant things that I have to offer, they'll buy it when they're with me. Now, I might get the email later sometimes, but the decision to purchase it happened when I was there and asking them if they wanted to. Now, that may not be strictly true, but I find it a useful belief because I was very, very, very much the type of person who tried to avoid making the explicit offer and saying the explicit price, and especially the part saying, do you want to do it? I avoided that like the plague for like at least a decade, and it cost me a lot. And I don't want it to cost you a lot. Make the offer at the meeting and ask them if they want to do it. If you really need that spelled out for you, I want you to say something to the effect of, okay, so just to recap, sounds like you got these problems, and that if we could resolve them, that would have this value for you. I think we can achieve that with this work together. We could start on this date. It costs this much. Do you want to do it? the problems you understand that they've got, the value that you know you can deliver, the work that you will do together, when you can start, how much it costs. Do you want to do it? Do that in the meeting. And once you say the bit where you say, do you want to do it? This is the only piece of sales technique I'll ever teach you. Once you've said that, shut up. That is the one sales technique from the 80s that I will ever tell you. Once you've said, do you want to do it? Be quiet and just wait, however long it takes. And then once you've done that, make the formalities really easy. Don't have shitloads of forms and stuff. The key thing you want to do is get their energetic commitment on paper. So make sure they've got a date in the calendar booked in that they're committed to, right? If it's a credit card sized purchase, just get their credit card details. Just make it really easy. All right. Got 8 minutes to go. We're just going to fit this in. I always, and I'm sure you do this too. Well, I don't know, maybe you don't. Maybe you're better at this than me, but I always, when I'm designing an hour-long webcast, it always ends up an hour and 30 minutes worth of content. I suck at this. I should just tell you all that it's gonna be 90 minutes and then make it an hour in my calendar and my plan, and that way it would line up perfectly. All right, 3 very quick ones for the post-sale. So after the sale has been made, we can still do things that make it easier to buy. The first one is when you are providing the value, right? I mean, so this one probably goes without saying, but maybe I should say it. If they buy your thing, make it really good. Deliver heaps of value. That is the number one way to be easy to buy. If you deliver lots of value and more than deliver on your promises, then you're going to be easy to buy. I didn't put that in the list. I think we all probably, I just assumed that you would know that. But while you are delivering that value, can you be constantly positioning the next step? Now, this is especially true if you've been selling in manageable chunks. But when you are delivering, I want you to start talking about what we would do next, what we will do next. Now, you'll do that whether you're coaching someone or training them, but also if you've like one of the manageable chunks is a day of training, then at the day of training, take the time to get lunch with the decision maker for the next step. Do you know what I mean? Like if HR brought you in to do the first bit, but really you need the COO's say so to make the next thing happen, then ask the HR manager to organize the lunch with the COO when you're there for the training day. Be positioning the next step when you're in delivery. And it's one thing to kind of have that in as an idea, but it's something else entirely, I think, to have it planned in. Like if you're the type of person who makes a training day plan in terms of the content that you're going to be delivering, that kind of stuff. Additionally, you should have talk to this person, leave this idea, ask these questions. Like you should be working as hard on positioning the next sale as you are on delivering value for this one. This one and one more to go. I want you to own the follow-up. Any engagement from the moment the documents are signed, there has to be an energetic responsibility to own the process. And I want you to do that from once the verbal or energetic commitment's been made in the meeting, from making sure that the documents all get signed and that everything gets ticked off and goes where it's got to go. I want you to own that. To making sure that the dates get in the calendar so the value can be delivered, I want you to own that. To the discussions afterwards that review what's happened, see what value, see what worked and what didn't, scopes out potential future opportunities and decides where we should go from here. I want you to own that. Own that entire process of following up. Take on the responsibility of being the person who does that and don't make it their job to do it. Here we go, last one. Can you be super easy to refer? When you do a good job, like in the long term, I reckon your ideal business model is you do great work and they refer you to 2 more people and you get at least one of those sales, and you do great work and they refer you to at least 2 more people and you get at least one of those. Like in the end, ideally, our business model becomes one of great work and referral. That's what we all want. Now, it's not what you get to start with, but it is something to aspire to. And one of the things that you've got to do to make that work is to be really easy to refer. So, as part of the relationship of knowing you, I want you to make it really clear to everyone who does appreciate you and values you how to refer you. So train them. Hey, you can just send an email to me and the person who you want to introduce. I'll send them a copy of my book, or I'll send them the white paper, or I'll send them access to my free whatever, and then we can have a follow-up call. But just make it really clear how you want them to refer you. And then, of course, when you do receive referrals, treat them with massive reverence. Because someone who's willing to refer you once will generally refer you once and then wait to see how that process plays out. Why? Because they want to know if referring you reflected well on them, neutrally on them, or badly on them. And they will let that first referral play out until they find out. And they will only ever refer you again if it definitely reflected well on them. If the person who received the referral found that referral valuable enough to think, oh, thanks, Janet, for referring me, that was really helpful. Whether they buy your stuff or not doesn't matter. What matters is, was the referral helpful? Did it reflect well on the person that did it? So there's 10 things and a bunch of other ideas. And I asked you to leave 3 gaps at the top of your piece of paper. So I'm curious, what is one that you've written down? What's one thing that you're, from your 3, that you reckon, you know what, if I did this, I'd be easier to buy? I'd love to hear a few. What are you thinking? And any questions as well, if you want to unpack anything or discuss anything. We are at time, so I know if people need to go, that's cool. I will be. Make the offer on the call. Awesome, Fiona. Do it. Linda?
I think it's the smaller chunks, Cole.
Yeah.
Because we've done some like $500 really affordable, easy entry point ones.
Yeah.
But they haven't necessarily moved on to the whole big program. So I think there's a different chunk.
Yeah, there's something in that intermediate space.
Yeah. So I think that
awesome.
It's a slightly bitier chunk than the really tiny little snippet.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that you probably want to think about there is like the risk reward. So if someone's willing to do the $500 thing and it's valuable, that's going to have engendered a little more trust and a little more whatever. And the question is that enough trust to commit, an entire year of their strategy or 3 years of their strategy to your advice? Like maybe there's not enough trust yet to make that energetic commitment, but they could commit to bringing everyone together to ideate a strategy, not to finalize it, not to commit to it fully or whatever, but there could be the $5,000 version of like, we're going to do a strategy ideation and then move on from there. So find the right next size thing. And I think you want the commitment to be big enough that they're a little bit like, here we go, but not so big that they're like, whoa. Thanks, Paul. See you soon, mate. Any others? What have you added to your list? I'd love to hear a couple.
Hey, Cole.
Yeah,
I'll just jump in, mate. Even got the hat on now, mate.
You got the hat on, brother. I love it.
It was just something you said, man. Like it's funny, eh? Like when you hear it back, sometimes it's the most obvious thing until you don't see it until someone else says it. And that bit where you talked about the need, the getting the pricing right, because as you increase that, as somebody who's been in that exec space for a number of years, you do get like more people involved, and the sign off of the level it goes to depends on the investment the company's going to make. So if you're pitching it to like it's an intro session for a particular part of the business, then price it appropriately, and you'll know that they're more likely to get it without having to, get that thing right. And it just made me think about how, as I'm moving into this space, how I chunk what I do. It was really useful. Thanks, man.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to hear it, dude. And it's much better to price something a little more modestly so that the person in that department or with the authority to make the decision also has the authority to make the purchase, right? Because once you're in the business, you've got way more of an opportunity to network with the right people, to meet the right people, to grow your profile within the business. And then when it comes time to ask for the $45,000 or the $100,000 or whatever it is, now you know a large portion, hopefully all, but at least a large portion of the people whose opinions are going to contribute to that decision. So get the work so that you can start to build that network. Totally. Awesome, mate. Thank you. Anyone else? What do you got on your list? Emma, Yoga, Lisa? Haven't heard. Huh? Got anything?
Sorry, I came in a bit late.
Oh, you're all good.
Sorry.
I was just writing into the chat actually. So I'm just starting out. So kind of some of this is sort of over there and I'm kind of still here.
Totally.
But what I really liked was the storyboarding. So I'm actually following myself through as a client. So actually look, instead of looking for mistakes, actually thinking, what does that process look like for one of my clients?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I haven't set up my website yet because I'm still in that action phase, like actually the sales action phase, but almost ready to get into websites. So what I've taken on board from that is the menu and thinking about, what might be the freebie to collect. So
I love that. And that's awesome, Lisa. One of the things I think about, especially for a website in the early days, is what does a person want from that website? Often what they want to do is know how to call you or how to get in touch with you. And like a good website often would be like lisaheald.com and then to book in a call, click here. Just make it really easy to get in conversation with people. And like, especially in the early days where you've got more time because you're not as busy, I reckon the more time you can spend in conversation with people, the more you can be learning about the people you want to serve, the better equipped you become to know what you should be writing on your website and what your storyboards should include, because you know that type of person a bit better now. You understand their psychology and their needs a little bit better, and you can tailor what you do to suit them. It's a really good investment of time to talk to the people that you want to serve, I reckon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. Yoga. Oh, you missed the mute button. I know you tried to hit it.
Yeah, I came in just on time for your 2x2 matrix. I mean, you said this before. For me, my greatest challenge is taking it, I'm too caught up in the meaningful, significant box and, taking it down and getting up there. I owe you a call, by the way. Life just got better of me the last couple of weeks.
It happens.
I'm there.
Totally.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So I know you got to go now. On Friday, December the 8th, we're getting together. A bunch of the people who are on this call are already coming, and some of the people who are on this call should come. So if you can get yourself to Melbourne, click on that link. It's $250. We're going to have an amazing day going to work designing a 2024 that will be truly extraordinary for you and your solo business, and I'd love to see you there. So click on that link in the chat box. Love to see you there. Thanks for coming, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to go and work out if my 4- and 2-year-old have destroyed the lounge room. I left them watching Bluey because my wife is in Japan. Fingers crossed. Catch you soon.